Hello, so in this video we're going to have a look about concerns about genetic technology. Now please make sure your phone is off, you've not got the TV on or any music or games on in the background to distract you, and you have your notebook ready to answer the questions as well. So first we're just going to do a quick recap about what is genetic technology. So genetic technology is what it says in the tin. It's where we use technology, computers and various things we have to help us, using powerful microscopes and new biological technology to change the genes of an organism. Now you might remember that the genes are the part of an organism that code for a characteristic. So if we give them a gene for something useful, that could really benefit us. Or if we remove a gene for something that causes a disease, again, that could be really useful. So these organisms are known as genetically modified, or GM. If you ask your parents about GM foods, they'll probably be able to tell you a lot of things about. There was a lot of fear around GM foods quite a few years ago. Now they've all had some of their genes changed using genetic engineering, and that's either through adding a gene in or removing a gene so that it doesn't have a characteristic. So what can we use genetic technology to do? There's quite a few things we can use it to do, and we're getting better and better at it. So we can do lots of medical research. So on for people, we could end inherited diseases. They're caused by those genes being passed down from parents to offspring. If we can remove that gene, there's going to be no inherited diseases, which could be great. We can end all these diseases that can end people's lives earlier than they need to. We could also choose certain characteristics for our children, our offspring. So I want a child that is going to be male or female, we could choose that. We could say, actually, I want one that's going to be taller than average, it's going to be faster than average, and we can then use that to make humans taller, faster, stronger, cleverer, whatever we want. Got a picture there. Now, this person hasn't been genetically modified. This is just someone who is very into bodybuilding. But this kind of thing could become the reality if we sort of went with it and go, right, well, we'll get those genes for building extra big muscles, and we could get all people looking at that. The Olympics would be fantastic. You know, people would be faster, would be breaking records all the time. Could be amazing. However, everyone could end up looking like this chap here, which I don't know about you. I don't fancy looking like him. Some people might do. That's fine, but not everyone will. Now, in agriculture, so slightly less controversial than getting everyone to look like that chap there, we could grow more crops, so we could grow more food, which would be great for feeding people. We could grow more resilient crops, so crops that can grow in either hot conditions or cold conditions, dry conditions, very wet conditions. We've even been able to make crops that glow in the dark when they need watering. They've taken a gene from a jellyfish and put it into crops. It's amazing the stuff they can do. We can get crops that produce a higher yield. By yield, I mean the amount of food they produce. We can also get larger animals for food. We can get animals growing faster. So this is a cow here. It's been given a gene added to it that increases its muscle mass, its hypertrophy gene. So it's got double the amount of mass and muscle on there. This means there's twice the amount of food on it that we can get from it. So we've got one cow, but we're getting twice the amount of food from it. Again, helping with hunger all around the world. I know this cow does look like it's been stretched a bit, and that's just because of the genes that have had it. It's made it that little bit longer and a little bit bigger. So there are advantages and disadvantages to genetic technologies and using them, and you can probably work a number of them out for yourself just thinking about them. You've probably got some that I haven't got on my list now, but I'm going to run through the ones that I am aware of, I can think of. So we'll look at some advantages first. So an advantage, we get this improved growth rates in plants and animals. Might be a bit controversial looking at that cow that look a bit too long, but there will be more food on the plants and the animals. which in terms of the human population needing more food as the human population is growing is probably quite a good thing. Again, we can get an increased yield of crops. So they're going to grow faster and they're going to grow more crops as well. We can get crops to grow in dry, hot, cold conditions, so we can grow them in more places around the world. Again, could definitely help with people that are feeling hunger or feeling the effects of hunger more. And we can get crops that can produce their own pesticides and herbicides. So the pesticides stop any insects or other things from eating them, and the herbicides to stop any weeds growing up around them, and save us having to spray chemicals onto them and help protect the ecosystem. We're not going to get that bioaccumulation, that build-up of toxic chemicals. So it could be really, really good. So far it's looking pretty good. And obviously as well, we can hopefully, end inherited diseases in humans. Now, there are some disadvantages, however. There always are with these sorts of things. We need to think about what's the good things, the advantages, and the disadvantages, the bad things. So it's a fairly new science. We don't really know what the long-term effects are. Like I said earlier, if you ask your parents about GM food, back in the 90s and 2000s, or the early 2000s, there was a lot of fear going around about genetically modified food. People would be like, oh, I don't want to eat genetically modified food, that's really bad for you. Because we didn't know what was going on. We were like, oh, this is stuff, there's things added into it. No one really knew about it yet. We are learning a little bit more about it, but it's still relatively new. There is the potential that we could develop dangerous new species, especially if the genetically modified organisms bred with the wild organisms, for example crops, we could get a new plant going, and with animals we could get a new species of animals appearing. If any of you have ever read the Hunger Games or seen the films, they've got the mockingjays are there. That is a result of a genetically engineered bird breeding with a wild bird and creating this new species of birds. It's in popular culture as well. Who knew we could get science in the Hunger Games? It's not all a dystopian future. Now, obviously, there are ethical issues as well. Now, we have the question of, should we be manipulating the DNA of an organism for our own gain? Do we know what we're going to be doing? Are there issues with it? What's going to happen to the crop? What's going to happen to people eating those crops? Do we completely understand it? There's a lot of ethical issues. Do we have that right to do it on crops, and then on animals, and then potentially on people as well? And will people try to make designer babies? As we're getting better and better at understanding what gene does what, is there the risk of people going, I'm going to design my baby to look exactly like this and how I want them to look? And we could end up having identical people. It could be potentially very, very bad. And then with us all being so similar, we could end up having clones. Could it create a class division of people who can afford it and people who can't? There are an awful lot of issues around with it. Now I have put a link to an article on Show My Homework for you to have a look at as well. That is quite interesting. It's going back to 2008, so this debate's been going on for quite a while, talking about where should we put the limits for these gene technologies. Anyway, I hope this has been interesting and informative. Do have a go at completing the questions. The answers are put up on Show My Homework. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Have a great day. Bye bye.